Chapter 3, World War III. Mo, Tony took a bite of his peanut butter and bologna sandwich. I don't think David Letterman is ever going to call. Sure he will, said Mo. But it's been 4 weeks since I mailed him my first letter. He probably gets 1,000,000 letters a day. It'll take him a while to read yours. He'll call. Tony stuck his finger into his mouth and scraped bread, bologna, and peanut butter from the roof. I don't know. Maybe I really need to get his attention. Mo picked up a mushy French fry and wiggled it. He ignored Tony's remark. I hate cafeteria food. Maybe I'll start bringing my lunch. Tony took his finger out of his mouth and studied the glob of goo stuck on the end. Ugh. Did you hear me? Mo looked deep into Tony's eyes. Yes, I did, and that worries me. Tony licked the goo off his finger. He stood up and took a quick look around the cafeteria. Miss Grant, the lunch monitor, was nowhere in sight. Maybe she went to the restroom. Maybe she took a kid to the nurse. Maybe she went to the Terminator's office. Maybe she went to the moon. It didn't matter. She was gone. Tony shouted, Mo, watch this! He lifted the bun off Mo's burger. He picked up the patty. Mean Dean sat on the other side of the cafeteria. Oh, no! Mo covered his eyes. Oh, yes. Tony cocked his wrist, narrowed his eyes, and sent the hamburger patty flying through the air like a frisbee. The patty smacked the back of Dean's head and exploded upon impact. Ketchup and mustard flew everywhere. Dean slowly stood up and turned around. Ketchup and mustard oozed down the back of his neck. Tony waved at him. This means war, baloney, Dean yelled. Dean picked up a patty and fired it at Tony. Tony ducked. It hit Daisy Buck in the face. This was unfortunate, because Daisy was the sort of student who once ate 13 crayons just to see if it could be done. Everybody called her Crazy Daisy, even her mother. Daisy wiped ketchup and mustard out of her eyes. She scanned the cafeteria until she saw Dean. Enemy sighted. Prepare to launch missiles. Hit the deck, Mo yelled. Crazy Daisy's on the loose. Fire missile number 1. She heaved her milk carton at Dean. Milk showered the cafeteria as it flew through the air. Then she picked up the milk carton to her left. Fire missile number 2. Kids scrambled for cover. Silence fell over the cafeteria. Fire missile number 3, she yelled as she picked up another milk carton to her right and fired it at the enemy. It hit the wall and exploded over Dean's head. Then General Casey climbed up on the table and yelled, Fire all missiles! Bombs away! Someone yelled. That's all it took. Within seconds, milk cartons, hamburger patties, and mushy French fries were flying in all directions. The cafeteria rumbled with the sounds of combat. It was a battle zone, World War III. Tony looked at the remaining piece of food on Mo's tray. Jell-O, a rectangular blob of jiggling cherry Jell-O. The perfect weapon to end the perfect battle, he thought. He quickly gathered his friends around him. This is it, he said, picking up the piece of Jell-O. Grab a chunk and let's bomb the bully machine. Something touched him on the shoulder. Something nice, something soft. That something was Anna Banana's hand. Count me in, TB, said Anna as she took her hand off his shoulder and then slugged him. Tony rubbed his arm. His face turned as red as the Jell-O. Thanks, was all he could manage as a goofy grin spread across his face. Mo elbowed Tony. Snap out of it, Romeo. It's time to blast the bully machine. Right. Where is he? Tony asked. Over by the hallway door, said Mo. Let's go, said Tony. Tony and his team crouched low and closed in on their target. Dean was leaning against the cafeteria door. When they got within striking distance, they stopped. On the count of 3, whispered Tony. 1, 2, 3. Fire! Tony's soldiers jumped up and fired their jello. Red, jiggling missiles rocketed through the air. It was a beautiful sight. Dean ducked just before impact. As the missiles flew over Dean's head, the door opened and Mr. Gore stepped into the cafeteria. Splat, 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 splat. Tiny blobs of jello slammed into Mr. Gore. His face, his huge chest, his belly, his legs. Nothing was spared. Mo looked at Tony. Tony looked at Mo. We're dead, they both said at the same time. Mr. Gore was stunned. He was also a mess. But most of all, he was mad. End of the world mad. Anthony Madison and Mohammed bin Abdul Hamad bin Jamaluddin bin al-Rashid, I'm going to ship you back to kindergarten. Mr. Gore had to go home and change his clothes. Mrs. Hernandez's secretary had to watch the kids clean up the cafeteria. Tony and Mo had to go to the principal's office. Mrs. Hernandez tapped her pen on her desk and glared at the 2 boys sitting across from her. The silence seemed to last forever. Both boys squirmed in their chairs. Then she finally spoke. Why? Well, Tony timidly began, I saw this great food fight on the Late Show with David Letterman, Mrs. Hernandez interrupted. Right? Yeah, it was really unnecessary, Mrs. Hernandez interrupted again. She continued to glare at them. Her eyes looked like a cobra's, slitted, dangerous. Boys, I've had enough of this Late Show nonsense. You're both on cafeteria cleanup duty for a month. I don't want to see you in here again. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am, both boys understand. If I see you in here again, I may have to suspend you from school for a day. Now scram, Mrs. Hernandez hissed through her gritted teeth. And if I were you, I'd beg for mercy when Mr. Gore gets back. He just may terminate you. Mr. Gore didn't terminate the 2 boys. So later that night, after promising his parents that he wouldn't be the one to start World War IV, Tony wrote a letter to David Letterman before he went to bed. October 4th. Dear Mr. Letterman, did you get my letters yet? I hope so. Do you like peanut butter and bologna sandwiches? I love them. Here's another top 10 list you may want to use on your show. The top 10 ways to surprise your teacher. Number 10. Actually turn your homework in when it's due. Number 9. Wear prison uniforms to class. Number 8. Set him up on a blind date with Miss America. Number 7. Post a photo of him collecting the morning newspaper in his underwear on the school website. Number 6. Call him Dad and insist that you're really his kid. Number 5. Fill his cup of coffee with Tabasco sauce. Number 4. Hang his underwear on the class Christmas tree instead of ornaments. Number 3. Tell him you love school more than you love Toys R Us. Number 2. Paperclip a $10 bill to a note saying, "Thanks," and give it to him before you turn in a test you forgot to study for. Number 1. bomb him with jello chunks when he walks into the cafeteria. Sincerely, Tony Baloney. P.S. Number 1 really happened. I got in big trouble today, and now I'm on cafeteria cleanup duty at school. My dad was really mad at me. He threatened to have some MPs from Leavenworth come and cart me away because I was involved in a sort of like military operation at school today. And my mom wasn't too happy either. She was so mad at me that she wouldn't even talk to me. So she wrote me a note and taped it to my bedroom door. It said, "Mr. Anthony Madison, congratulations. Because of the events that occurred today, your allowance will not be automatically deposited into your grimy fist for the next week. Best regards, your mother." Call me and I'll explain. My phone number is 816-555-0942. Please invite me to be on your show. Soon, before I end up in a military prison.